Welcome to the first of many conversations with Erinx. Today we're going to start by having a conversation around the recent acquisition of Auaha by Erinx. So I'm Sandra Julian. I was the owner of Auaha, and in May this year, Erinx acquired Auaha. So I'm sitting down with Nicole Walker, current CEO of Erinx, for a conversation around the acquisition, why we did it, what it looks like to be a woman in business, and hopefully touch on the cultural nuances between the organisations, the similarities, the differences, not only in organisations but in country. So, Nicole, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I think I would like to start with Erinx. How did you become involved in Erinx? Let's start there.
Yeah, so an interesting start to the journey. I was in a lift with my friend who lived in the same building as me, and I told her that I was looking for a new job. I think I was 21 at the time. And she just happened to mention she worked at an events business, and I thought I'd give that a go. So applied for a role and was fortunate to be offered a senior project coordinator back in 2014. And and had no idea about conferencing at the time, didn't even know what a PCO was, had a little cheat sheet with all of the acronyms from the industry because there's quite a few. And from there, I was very fortunate to be given a lot of different opportunities within the business and quickly progressed from senior project coordinator to the CEO. And then 3 years ago yesterday, actually purchased the business off the founder, Rosalind McLeod. So it's been a journey.
Wow, so you were CEO before you actually purchased the business?
Yes,
so
I
didn't know that.
I became CEO in April 2020. For those of you that have those dates burned in your memory, it was a very challenging time to be a CEO of any company. And one of my first tasks, unfortunately, as CEO was to make a number of the team redundant, to reduce everyone's hours, and to basically admit that I had no idea what was going on and what was going to happen, but that we were on that journey together and we were going to face it head on. So a memorable moment in time, probably not for the best reasons, but part of the journey nonetheless.
Yeah. And so what has that looked like going from employee CEO to owner CEO? What's that journey been like?
So it's a really interesting question, and I would then love to ask you the same question, because being an employee of a business and then taking ownership is a very different journey to starting something from the ground up. And so I have an employed CEO mentality at times, whilst also then remembering that, you know, I am a shareholder of the business. It is my money that we're dealing with, and I am assuming significant risk, which sometimes I like to try not to think about. So I do have different perspectives because I have come from a very different journey and experience. Whereas I can only imagine, and having heard from Rosalind as well before I took ownership, that it is a very different mentality when you build it from the ground up, and it is probably very much part of your identity, whereas it wasn't part of my identity. Now it is, and I'm synonymous with the name, the brand, the company, but it wasn't always like that. So really keen to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, and so the 3 years, I think, before I was going to implement my exit strategy, I knew I had to uncouple that identity.
Right.
Because when any time I walked into a room, it was, oh, here comes Auaha. You know, yes, here comes Sandra, but Auaha and Sandra went hand in hand. Yeah. So about 3 years before I knew I wanted to implement the exit strategy, I had to do some work on who am I without the business? What do I do if I don't have the business? What does that look like? So I almost had to start my second journey pretending that I'd already sold the business while still being in it. So that took me a while. And even when I reached out to you, I was still like, am I ready? Am I not? Am I ready? Am I not?
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no time. There's going to be no time that I'm going to be ready. You just have to go in. And now I'm, 8 weeks post-deal.
Yes.
I'm still working out me without the brand of Auaha.
Yes.
Even though they're still, the number plates on my car still says Auaha. So that's like, it reminds me daily when I hop into my car, like, okay, I'm not that anymore. That's just a name. It's not actually part of who I am.
And it's
anymore.
not something you can just flick on and off.
No.
It is such a journey. You're right. I mean, 3 years beforehand, and you know, we were saying it's only been 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I think we both need to, and everyone needs to just stop and appreciate how much we have achieved in those 8 weeks. But that is a very short amount of time to create a new ownership, personality, identity, and culture even within the business as a result of the deal. So we've still got work to do. Yeah.
But I think what's been super helpful for me is actually carrying on inside of Erinix and being part of the transition on the inside.
Right.
Because I think the event that we're doing next week is the last event that I feel super attached to.
Yes.
And I think so after the event next week, and I'm not so attached because the relationship isn't mine to hold. I've handed over the relationship of the other events that are coming in the pipeline, and I feel comfortable that I've handed them over and they're in good hands. So I think next week's going to be a real telltale sign to what it looks like after that event, where I don't have that responsibility of relationship and that like it's on my shoulders and how it goes. So that being involved in Erinix and slowly over the last 8 weeks being able to let go of that and know that there is a really capable team to take on not only the relationship and fostering that, but surrounded by lots of other capable people to help as well, because we were a small team. And so when you're in a small team, you are the one helping everybody fill the gaps. So Erinix has got a much bigger team, and I think that's also contributed to my ability to just slowly let go and experience that let go in a gradual way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Gradual, but in 8 weeks.
Yeah. Well, it feels gradual.
That's good. That's good.
So talking about, the acquisition, and now that we're on the other side, but when I approached you and said, hey, would you be interested? Because that took me a few weeks to actually just send that email too.
Yeah, wow.
What was your kind of reaction to that?
When I received the email, my first reaction was absolutely. And then it was, okay, as long as we can make it work. We were fortunate enough to meet, it was about a year before that. And I certainly saw a lot of alignment in yours and my values. And so there was certainly the opportunity there that seemed quite a natural transition in that respect. Erinix does a lot in the New Zealand market already, both in the incentives and the conferencing industries. And so having the ability to then join forces with such a well-known brand and name within the New Zealand market seemed like a natural progression for us. And to then already have that established within yourself, the brand and the team made it even easier in theory to do that transition. So it was very exciting to receive the email. I think one thing that I'm always conscious of is respecting and acknowledging how much work and time you've invested into the business. And so, it's almost like handing over a child in some respect, and that's not lost on me. Very similar to when I took over from Rosalind. Her child was 47 years old at that stage, but it is certainly a massive decision and undertaking, and I specifically am always very conscious about trying to honour and respect the history, the heritage, and the cultural values of the businesses that we acquire. I own / we acquire. So it's a delicate process.
Yeah.
You can never get it right, and then with a large team as well, trying to educate everyone around the alignment that we see is no mean feat as well.
And that's definitely something that I've noticed. Very, I don't want to say early on, but I was starting to build Auaha maybe 10, 12 years ago, and we got to a team of 12, and I was just like pulling my hair out, and then I burnt it all down only to rebuild it to what I wanted in a business. And at that time I was like, I don't want a business that's any more than 5 or 6 employees, because now that feels intimate, and now it feels like that we have a real relationship with a client. But I think that just comes down to my inexperience, because I've not learnt from anyone else. Like I've had to just build the bridge as I wanted to cross the river, and I got to that point where this is where I feel comfortable.
Exactly.
So hence I'm like, no, I got really choosy around the clients that I wanted, the business that I wanted, because I didn't want a huge team and a huge machine. So coming into Erinix, that might sound like, well, why choose Erinix to come into when that was my want? And so what I saw was that Erinix provided an opportunity to now take our business to an international market, because I think I probably knew that was going to be the progression if it was going to move beyond what it was. And so reaching out to you was like, this is the opportunity where Auaha can now take what it's now really known for and move into more of an international market where your reputation was already well known and well established. And so when I was doing my research and, came across Erinix with its reconciliation action plan, I was like, now that I've not seen before. I've not in a PCO world anyway. So kind of one question that I've not asked you in the last 8 weeks is, why did you even go down that track of putting together that reconciliation action plan when you could have just coped without it and not had it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. So I think there was a number of different reasons that led us down that path. The first is that as a whole, we're very passionate about First Nations, acknowledging and respecting them in our events in a way that is correct, that is respectful, and that really showcases, especially for the international events, what an incredible Indigenous culture and history Australia and New Zealand both have. We have so much to learn in that space, and the Reconciliation Action Plan is the foundation blocks for us to go on that learning journey. So, we don't know it all, absolutely not, but we want to understand it, and we want to be able to go on that journey in the right way, to build it into our culture within the organisation, but then also to be able to demonstrate it to our clients so that they can learn and go on the journey with us. We have had the conversation around you and the Auaha team not consulting on cultural sensitivities and everything, which I find a really interesting point as well. And again, by no means is that our intention, but we need to be educated first so that we can then ensure that what we do recommend or do reflect within our events is the right way of showcasing what an incredible culture we have. So, and I think that's a really good point, and another element that, you know, respectfully I aligned with you, because being a Maori-owned business is absolutely incredible. And, you know, when I say that we're on that journey, there's so much that we can learn from you and your team and your experience as well. And, you know, so we're only dipping our toes into the water in that respect.
And I think now I'm on the inside of Erinx, you know, I'm like, all right, I can now see where the beginning of that journey is at. And very much, even though Auaha was a Māori-owned business, and that created a lot of opportunity for us, and a lot of our clients came because of that, I was really clear that we're not here to be your cultural element.
Exactly.
And the one question that I always got asked, usually by non-Māori clients, was like, do I have to have a pōhiri, or how do I go about that? And so my response was always, well, where are you on an organisational journey of becoming culturally competent? And if you're on step one, then let's do what's appropriate to that.
Absolutely.
So you can't put into your conference a cultural element where your organisation can't stand that up and back it, because that's the back
before you run.
That's right, yeah. So, and most of the time they'd kind of be relieved that they didn't have to do anything that they weren't comfortable with. But knowing that they'd come to work with me, there would be some expectation that they would go away and start working on their cultural competency in order to next time progress to the next level. And what are they doing internally in an organisation? So I think that was, the biggest impact we were able to have on our clients is just relieving them of the pressure that they thought they had to have a certain level of cultural input into their event.
Yes.
And when you give them the permission to go, let's take your organisation on a journey before you take your conference to any kind of place where you have to stand that culture up, because if you do that without the backbone, then really that's just tokenism.
Absolutely.
So it's, and now being on the inside of Erinx, being able to go, okay, now I see how we can add value to the journey.
Absolutely.
Has been really great too. But just that foundational piece of like knowing that this is a journey you want to go on, that was really attractive to me in looking for what's my next move with the company. Right. So really good. Let's shift gears a little bit.
Let's do it.
And let's talk about being a woman in business.
Our favourite topic.
Our favourite topic. Because my kids are in their 20s, right? So I'm on the other side and essentially an empty nester, which is really nice. Your kids are really young.
Very young.
And so, you know, there's probably a good, 15-year gap in generations between me being a working mum, business-owning mother versus now you being a business-owning mother. And I know I've talked to you about when my kids were young, I was the mother, the housekeeper, the laundry doer, the cook, the cleaner, the everything, and the business owner. And whilst there was a feeling from the husband that it was very much a shared load, I can look back now and go, well, I still did the lion's share at home and still worked a 40-hour week. And, you know, I say my kids suffered because I sacrificed.
Absolutely.
But if you talk to my kids now, they were like, you were always present when you needed to be.
Oh, that's so good.
So, you know, part of me like I can relieve the guilt a little bit. But I'm interested to know, you know, we're kind of 20 years on from my journey at that phase where your kids are now. Like, what does that look like for you in this day and age when your kids are little?
Absolutely. And, you know, it comes back to my journey through the business as well, because I had my first child, my daughter, quite young, and I was still a project manager at that stage. But anyone that knows me knows that I'm a little bit ambitious, and I always wanted to be a leader. I always wanted to be in management. I never dreamed of owning my own business. That was just an evolution, but I was still very ambitious. And so I didn't see being a mother and my career as being two separate things. They were very much just part of my life. You know, people always say work-life balance. It's just my life. My life is work. My life is being a parent. My life is having a good time. You know, like you've got to then just balance all elements of your life, not just work and life. And so, you know, that was challenging because obviously I still wanted to progress my career but be a mum at the same time. And, you know, I'm speaking on behalf of dads. It's a lot easier because they don't have the child. And they don't necessarily then feed the child for 12 months, which I was determined to do because I wanted to be that type of mother, you know. And so there are a lot of decisions that I made that were then competing with each other, but at the same time, you then just make it work, right? You're constantly sacrificing something in order to achieve something else, and making sure that you're balancing those decisions within yourself is really important, you know. And you know, it's so reassuring to hear your children say that to you when they grow up, that you were always present when you need to be, because that's certainly what I try to do. And if there's anything that I want my children to say about me and my career, it's that I taught them how to work hard and to reap benefit from that hard work. And they may not see it now. They certainly tell me that regularly. But I keep that, you know, glimmer of hope in there that they'll look back at it and be like, yes, you know, Mum was one of the hardest workers I have ever met. And, you know, I can see the benefits of that. Yeah, so, you know, after 6 months after having my daughter, I came back and I was helping deliver an 8,000 PAX conference in Perth that spanned 12 days. And so my mum actually flew to Perth with me, and we stayed at the hotel next to the convention centre. I would wake up at 4 a.m. I would go and brief the team at 5. I would be back by 6 to feed my daughter. And then hand her to my mother with a microphone in one ear and mobile phone ringing in the other. I would keep going back every 3 hours to feed her again. It then turned out she was teething, which was delightful. So she woke up every hour on the hour during the night as well. So I literally didn't sleep for 12 days. But,
oh my gosh,
you know, you do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
And I was determined to show that I could be a working mum, that I could make both my career work and being a mother work. And so I did. And then I went and had 2 more children because, you know, one wasn't enough. But interestingly enough, you know, my third child was only 6 months old when I bought the business. And you said it earlier, like there's never the right time to sell a business. There's also never the right time to buy a business. COVID and a 6-month-old could have probably timed it better. But when an opportunity like that presents itself, you have to say yes. You know, you can never live going, what if? What if, regretting something that you didn't do because it wasn't perfect or ideal. So, look, I mean, every stage of life is challenging. You just have different challenges, right? Totally. And young kids have challenges, but I'm sure teenagers have different challenges. And then, you know, being an empty nester brings another challenge because all of a sudden you've got so much free time, and I wouldn't know what to do with myself with free time. That would just be crazy. So,
I know. And because I've spent, you know, all of my motherhood trying to balance that work and motherhood, and if I'm not putting a load of laundry in and then doing the run sheet and then cooking a meal and then doing something else, I'm like, well, what am I? And that was part of the uncoupling as well, is what am I going to do if I don't have this to do anymore?
Because you mentioned that your company had a lot of milestones that intertwined with your children. You know, I'm keen to hear more about that.
Yeah, that was So I was on maternity leave. No, not maternity leave. I was pregnant with my second child when the opportunity to organise a conference came up. And it was very early on in the piece. And so we took that on board. We weren't even a company at this point. We were just like part of the community, and we got reached out to and said, okay, we've got this conference that's coming to town. They're looking for someone to organise it, and a few of us put our hands up in different roles. And so none of us really had experience doing an event before, and we were just doing what we thought was the right thing to do. So it wasn't like we had a company and we had systems or processes or software we had nothing, and we were just making it up as we went.
Sounded like a good idea.
It did. And so that conference, my second child, I was at the conference centre setting up registration, packing in, doing room prep, all of that. Yeah. I thought I was going home to have a good sleep to come back and deliver. I went home to go to the hospital to give birth.
Oh my gosh.
So the first day of my very first conference ever, I never actually made it there because I gave birth. And then we decided after that actually we could do this again. Yeah. And then we started getting requests. Oh, you did that one. Could you do this one? You did that one. Can you do this one? And so 18 months later, when we decided to incorporate a company and go all in on a business, I was 7 months pregnant with a third child.
Oh my goodness.
And so we incorporated the company. We opened office, a physical office, opened office, and then 2 months later I gave birth to the third child. So it's like that's all I've known.
Yeah.
I've just doing business and raising my kids is really all I've known.
Yeah, wow. What a journey.
It really has been. And, and that I can peg my kids' upbringing to things at work and just milestones in and of itself. Yeah, that's I think how I remember things.
I was going to say, you don't have to remember different years of anniversaries.
Yeah,
they're all intertwined.
They're all intertwined. And, I've always had this philosophy is if you really love what you're doing, then work will never feel like work.
Yeah, exactly.
And so to what you said is it's just life, and we're just doing life.
Yeah. And
as long as we're doing life with all the pieces that we want to put into our life, then that's the main piece.
Yeah.
And there's gives and takes and pushes and pulls and challenges and celebrations all along any journey, regardless of whether you own the business or not. There's just a little bit more responsibility that comes with that.